This lawmaker is now helping in the search for a missing Houston soldier. Vanessa Guillen was last seen in April at Fort Hood in Killeen. Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, with the help of the League of Latin United American Citizens, or LULAC, announced today an extra $25,000 reward for information that helps find her. Also today, the soldier's family making another plea to the public.
Vanessa Guillen was born on September 30th, 1999 at Ben Taub Hospital and raised in the Lone Star State of Texas. She was the second born out of 6 siblings, born from immigrants from Mexico who originated from Zacatecas State. Her dad, Rogelio, was a machine operator for work, and her mother, Gloria, was a housewife who looked after the kids. When Vanessa was just 11, she developed a love for football, or as it's called in the States, soccer. This would flourish into other sports, especially running, often competing in marathons. Exercising was a passion of hers. She loved the Puerto Rican artist Bad Bunny and was described as being nice and respectful to everyone that she met, organised and focused, as described by her younger sister, Lupe, whose sister was her biggest inspiration in life. Her sister recalls one particularly rainy day when Vanessa was picking her up from school. They passed a woman at a bus stop. It was pouring rain. Vanessa pulled over, asked if she needed anything, and offered her a ride. That's the kind of person she was. While still a youngster, she would develop another passion, a burning desire to be part of her country's army, to represent the United States and defend her homeland. She would frequently be playing with her brother's toy pistol, which only fueled her desire further. Vanessa attended Cesar E. Chavez High School on 8501 Howard Drive, Hallandale neighborhood, Houston, Texas. She loved to learn, graduated in 2018 in the top 15% of her class. Shortly after graduating high school, she would go on to pursue one of her passions, and it wasn't a sport. Vanessa's dreams of joining the army and representing her country had manifested themselves into a reality. Playing with that toy gun all them years ago had planted the seed, and it was beginning to flourish. That water gun would turn into an assault rifle. Despite her mother's disapproval, Vanessa would follow her dreams, and in June 2018 she would join the army, training as a 91F, enlisting before she had even graduated from high school. The U.S. Army uses different personnel management systems to classify their soldiers in which different specialities that they receive specialised training for. For example, an 89B is an ammunition specialist, an 88K a watercraft operator, and a 91F a small arms and towed artillery repairer. This was Vanessa's speciality. After completing 10 weeks of basic combat training, followed by 13 weeks of advanced individual training with on-the-job instruction, Vanessa was qualified, aged just 20 years old. Talk about living out your dreams. After her first training session, Vanessa was so happy that she didn't want to come home. She was fulfilling her dreams. How could anyone doing that ever want to come home? Vanessa would shortly be transferred somewhere closer to home, Fort Hood, which is around 3.5 hours away from home, and allowed her to drive to see her family and boyfriend, which she would do every weekend without fail. Vanessa's demeanour would change, however, not long after her move closer to home, to Fort Hood, Texas. In October 2019, her mum Gloria began to notice bags under Vanessa's eyes. She lost weight, her hair was thin, and she was spending hours and hours on end at the gym. She wasn't the only one to be picking up on a change to Vanessa's usually glowing personality.
Vanessa did look like she had a lot on her mind. When I did see her the previous times, hi, how are you, how's your day, hope you have a good day, and this time she didn't really say much. She paid and she left.
It was clear something was up with Vanessa. Mother's instinct was never wrong, and her mother Gloria wasn't going to let it go. Despite Vanessa keeping it bottled up into herself for some time, her mum kept pushing, and eventually Vanessa revealed to her who or what was bothering her. Sometime in February 2020, Vanessa would reveal to her mother that she was being sexually harassed by a higher ranking soldier at work. She didn't tell her mother his name and told her that the conversation had to remain exclusively between the pair of them. Gloria insisted for Vanessa to leave the army right that moment and to rip up her army contract in front of fellow officers, then come home. Vanessa, however, insisted that she would take care of it herself. She told her mother, "I can't report it. I've seen other girls pass through the same situation and they ignore them. They say that they're lying. They don't listen to them, which is a serious cause for concern." The joyful daughter, sister, girlfriend, and so much more was changing in front of their very eyes. She changed from laughing and smiling to being serious and not wanting to talk to anyone. On one occasion when Vanessa arrived home, she threw her bag to the ground, slammed her bedroom door and began crying. It was all clearly getting too much. When her sister Lupe asked her what was wrong, she responded that she was too young to understand. Suddenly, out of the blue, on the weekend of April 19th, 2020, Vanessa returned home a different person from last time when she visited. Her personality was back. She was happy again, planning a future with her boyfriend and weighing out her options for different colleges for after the army. The nightmare was over. She was back. However, it was only just the beginning. Sunday, the 19th of April, would be the last time Vanessa Guillen's family would ever see her. 3 days after leaving home, on the 22nd of April 2020, communication from Vanessa went dark. That same evening, after not hearing from Vanessa for several hours, her sisters, boyfriend and best friend began to realise that something was very wrong here. Her father felt a sharp pain in his chest, like he was being stabbed, and her older sister knew that something wasn't right, so she took matters into her own hands. Myra left for Fort Hood that very same night and embarked on a 3-hour drive, arriving outside the gates of the base in the early hours that next morning, looking for Vanessa as well as answers. Later that same day, Army investigators were notified by a captain in the 3rd Cavalry Regiment that someone was missing, Private First Class Vanessa Guillen. A reward of up to $15,000 was offered for information leading to her whereabouts. Salma Hayek shared with her at the time 15 million Instagram followers, and by the 16th of June, the reward had risen to $50,000. Vanessa Guillen was last seen at around 1 PM on April 22nd in the parking lot of her unit, the Regiment Engineer Squadron headquarters of the 3rd Cavalry Regiment. Her car keys, identification card, bank card and barracks keys were all suspiciously found inside the armory where she worked. The police had a lot of questions to ask, especially to one of the last people to see her before she went missing, Specialist Aaron Robinson. Aaron Robinson had joined the army as a combat engineer in October 2017. He was from Calumet City, Cook County, Illinois. He attended Thornton Fractional North High School in Calumet City, playing as a varsity football player there, being 5'11" but weighing in at 200 pounds. In 2018, he was deployed to Iraq for around 7 months. Upon his return, he began serving at Fort Hood, Texas. Vanessa Guillen was working in an arms room adjacent to the room Aaron Robinson was working in. Vanessa left the room to confirm serial numbers for weapons and equipment with Robinson. Robinson was interviewed shortly after Vanessa's disappearance on April 28, 2020. Robinson told the police that Vanessa came through, grabbed some paperwork and the serial number for a .50 caliber machine gun that required servicing, and that was it. She left. That was the last he saw of Vanessa. He then went straight home from work on April 22nd to his residence in Killeen that he shared with his girlfriend Cicely Aguilar, and she provided a solid alibi for him, telling police that he had been with her and at home all night. Almost a month has now passed since the disappearance of Vanessa Guillen, until 2 new witnesses are interviewed, which in turn gave them brand new evidence to warrant digging deeper. Both told them that they observed Robinson struggling to move a large pelly case outside of the armoury. The next day, police brought Robinson in again for more questioning. He consented to a search of his cell phone by law enforcement. His data would show that he made multiple calls to his girlfriend on that night of April 22nd and into the following morning, with each call lasting longer than a minute. It's a bit strange to be excessively calling your girlfriend when you're with her. When asked for his reason for the strange phone activity, he told the police that his girlfriend couldn't find her phone and he was helping her find it. His cell phone data would also pinpoint him in a rather unusual location. A month after her boyfriend's phone was searched, his girlfriend Cecilia Aguilar is brought in for questioning, and too has her phone data investigated by the police. Both of their cell phone data would point them to the Leon River, which is 25 miles from Fort Hood and a 25-ish minute drive away. Their cell phone data would show that they were at the river for around 2 hours on the morning of April 23rd and again on April 26th. Aguilar then changed her story after the police had stone cold evidence that she wasn't in the house all night with him like she claimed, and told them that in fact she and Robinson had driven to a park in Beltline to look at the stars. Police investigating the area that the phones pinged from find a huge piece of evidence. They don't find a body, however they do find a burnt out pelly case, fueling suspicion. At about 1 PM, contractors working on a fence near the River Leon discover human remains and inform law enforcement.
The fast rural road in Little River Academy, human remains were found around 11:30 Tuesday morning. Major TJ Cruz with the Bell County Sheriff's Office says a man working on a nearby property found them. Tim Miller of Texas EquiSearch says they were found in a shallow grave near the Leon River. He says the grave was so well concealed the week prior, Texas Rangers and members of EquiSearch were standing on it when they found what he calls evidence of Guillen's disappearance just 3 feet away.
That very same night, with the mountain pressure piling in on her, on the 30th, Robinson's girlfriend came clean about what happened to Vanessa. Robinson struck a female soldier in the head with a hammer multiple times in his arms room, killing her, she told investigators. Aaron Robinson had bludgeoned Vanessa Guillen to death with a hammer, put the soldier in a large pelly case that he was crucially seen struggling with, then proceeded to take her body out to Leon River, leaving the case and body there. Robinson then proceeded to pick up his girlfriend from a gas station where she worked, then the pair drove back to the river. From here the pair dismembered Vanessa Guillen using a hacksaw or axe and a machete type knife. They then proceeded to burn the body, then buried it in 3 separate holes that they dug. Cell phone records would show that the pair had returned to the burial site equipped with hairnets and gloves as well as concrete. They would continue breaking down her corpse further and covered 3 holes with concrete before returning home and burning their clothes. At this point, Robinson was confined to his on-post barracks room, placed under the watch of an unarmed escort, which clearly wasn't the best unarmed escort. Robinson, while confined in his room, saw these news reports. In a call that was unbeknown to him, being monitored by the police, he called his girlfriend telling her, "Baby, they found pieces, they found pieces." Upon knowing that the net was closing in on him and he was going to get caught, Aaron Robinson made a dash for freedom and somehow escaped past his armed escort. Yeah, see what I mean? Maybe try an armed escort next time, or just maybe a better unarmed one. Robinson's ongoing calls back to his girlfriend led the police straight to him out in Killeen on the night of June 30th. As the police approached, Aaron Robinson turned a firearm that he was possessing on himself and killed himself. How he got a firearm is still unknown to this day. The remains were later identified to be that of Vanessa Guillen. Here's a recap of events from the point Vanessa was murdered, as I know that all got a bit complicated. Vanessa Guillen is murdered by Aaron Robinson, dismembered with the help of his girlfriend and buried along the Leon River. According to law enforcement, tracking of cell phone data, Robinson and Aguilar returned to the Leon River to break down remains further. Robinson was interviewed shortly after Vanessa's disappearance. He denied having any involvement. 2 new witnesses are interviewed who observed Robinson struggling with a tough box outside of the armory. Robinson consents to a search of his cell phone by law enforcement using a universal forensic extraction device, placing him at the Leon River. His girlfriend, Aguilar, is interviewed for the first time, with her cell phone data too placing her suspiciously at the Leon River alongside her boyfriend. Police locate a burnt pelly case after investigating the River Leon that cell phone records placed the pair at. Contractors find human remains alongside the River Leon. That same day, Aguilar came clean about the killing of Vanessa Guillen. Aaron Robertson fled Fort Hood after the remains were found. In the early hours of the 1st of July, Aaron Robinson shot himself dead after being approached by law enforcement. The remains are confirmed to be that of Vanessa. Robinson's girlfriend has since been charged with 3 counts of conspiracy to tamper with evidence, to which she pleaded not guilty. She faces up to 20 years in prison if found guilty. As far as a motive for the murder, it's unknown whether Robinson was the one who was harassing Vanessa. He denied this to investigators and told them that she intended to report him to their superiors for his relationship with a married woman, his now girlfriend Aguilar, who was shockingly married to a former Fort Hood soldier, Keon Devonte Aguilar. A clear motive for murder, given the repercussions being reported would have. The killing of Vanessa Guillen enraged the whole nation. How could this happen in an army base? Vanessa's family called for justice and improvement on the way claims of sexual harassment are handled by the military as a whole. The case of Vanessa warranted a full independent review that commenced on the 10th of July 2020. The Guillen family met with Donald Trump to discuss the case, as well as give them his full assurance of a proper independent review of the case.
Y que vea mi sufrimiento.
And this is from her heart, and she knows it's of your heart.
Well, I saw this on one of the shows recently, and I was just looking, and it hit me very hard. I saw what happened to your daughter Vanessa, who is a spectacular person and respected and loved by everybody, including in the military. And I invited you to the White House. As you know, the FBI and the DOJ are now involved. We got them involved. And the people at Fort Hood, where it took place, are very much involved. We didn't want to have this swept under the rug, which could happen. And so I'd like you maybe just, if you'd like, for the media to explain exactly what happened as we all understand it, but they don't, perhaps.
The results of the investigation on December 8, 2020 would see 14 US commanders and other leaders at Fort Hood disciplined due to multiple leadership failures, and that there was a permissive environment for sexual assault and sexual harassment at Fort Hood.
The initial investigation into Vanessa's death, coupled with high numbers of crimes and deaths at Fort Hood, has revealed a series of missteps and multiple failures in our system and within our leadership. For that reason, on July 30th, I directed the Undersecretary of the Army, Mr. James McPherson, to establish an independent review committee to review the culture at Fort Hood. Secretary McPherson, with the help of the League of United Latin American Citizens and some members of Congress, selected a diverse and highly experienced panel to determine whether the command climate and culture at Fort Hood and the surrounding military community reflected the Army's values, including safety, respect, inclusiveness, and a commitment to diversity in workplaces and communities free from sexual harassment and sexual assault. The panel, led by Chris Swecker, also included Jonathan Harmon, Carrie Ricci, Keta Rodriguez, and Jack White. You'll have an opportunity to speak with them shortly, and we will make their report available to the public. Over the course of 103 days, the panel surveyed 31,612 soldiers, interviewed 647 soldiers, and met with civic and elected leaders, local law enforcement leaders, and the local district attorneys. On November 9, the panel briefed the Army senior leaders and provided 9 findings and 70 recommendations. The findings of the committee identified major flaws with sexual harassment and assault response prevention program from implementation, reporting, and adjudication. Fundamental issues with Fort Hood Criminal Investigation Command field office activities that led to unaddressed problems on Fort Hood. And finally, a command climate at Fort Hood that was permissive of sexual harassment and sexual assault.
Among those disciplined, Major General Scott L. Efflant, Colonel Ralph Overland, and Command Sergeant Major Bradley Knapp. The Army suspended Major General Jeffrey Broadwater and Command Sergeant Major Thomas C. Kenny, pending the outcome of a new investigation into the 1st Cavalry Division's Command Climate and Program for Preventing and Responding to Sexual Harassment and Assault. seems too little too late if you ask me. Vanessa Guillen was a hero who died serving and protecting our country. Multiple murals appeared, one in our hometown of Houston and another at Taqueria del Sol Park in the Place neighbourhood. A candlelit memorial service commenced on the 6th of July 2020 at City Hall in Richmond, California, with hundreds of people gathering to honour Vanessa and other victims of sexual violence and mistreatment in the military.
Hundreds gathered to remember Vanessa Guillen, the Fort Hood soldier who disappeared on April 22nd on post, and later details from an affidavit revealed she was killed. One by one, dozens of people lit candles and prayed together, hugged, and cried. Her immediate family was not at the candlelight vigil, but Guillen's cousins were there remembering her.
We are here to make justice, demand justice, because that's what she needs. And we are the voice, and that's why we're here.
Vanessa Guillen was a hero who died serving and protecting our country. It shone a light into the problems for women and men too in the army, not just in the army, but every industry. Sexual harassment is everywhere and should not be taken with a pinch of salt like it was in this case. If Vanessa felt like she could report what was happening to her, then maybe she'd still be alive to this day. What kind of environment is it that you have to sit and put up with sexual harassment as you know it's happened to other people, and when they've had the courage to speak up, are disciplined or shrugged off to the side? It's disgusting. It's a case that's strikingly similar to Sarah Everard, who was murdered by a serving police officer in the UK. That too sparked outrage. I've covered that previously, so feel free to check it out. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, then please drop a like. It helps me more than you'll ever know. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.